Welcome to Mr. Dread, the place where true horror isn't just told, it's uncovered. I'm the eye that sees it all, the wall that listens, and the mouth that speaks what no one dares to say out loud. Every 48 hours, I bring you real stories, gathered from the darkest corners of the earth. Like, share, and subscribe if you're not afraid to look closer, and tell me which story haunts you the most. I'm watching the comments. This happened back in 2007. I wasn't using any rideshare app back then. It was just my beat-up sedan, a magnetic for-hire sign, and a list of numbers from the community bulletin. Nights were my thing. Quieter roads, less traffic, less talking, just enough money to scrape by. Trabadal, that night started like any other. I had just dropped off a guy who reeked of sweat and vodka outside a closed bar, and I was parked at a 24-hour gas station sipping stale coffee. That's when the call came in. Block number. The voice was sharp, polite but short. Asked if I could pick him up from outside a supermarket about 10 minutes from me. He didn't say where we were going, just that he'd give direction on the move. When I pulled up to the curb, he was already standing there, hands in his coat pockets, not a single bag in sight. No groceries, no backpack, just him and this quiet stillness about him. He wasn't very tall, probably in his late 30s, dark jeans, neat haircut, brown leather gloves even though the weather was mild. He didn't say hello when he got in, just closed the door behind him, leaned slightly forward, and said calmly, "I'll give you 60 pounds if you follow a car for me, a green hatchback. You'll see it soon, just do what I say." I thought he was joking at first. Then he pulled a folded note from his coat and dropped it over the armrest. 3 crisp 20-pound bills, just sitting there on top of my dusty cup holder. It should have been a red flag, but I needed the money, and the guy didn't look like trouble. He looked clean, professional even, kind of like someone you'd imagine worked in insurance or accounting. Still, I asked, "Why are we following someone?" He replied without hesitation, "It's personal. He took something that belongs to me. I just want to see where he goes." Then just like that he said, "There's the car. Trompa de Zao." I looked where he pointed, and sure enough, there was a faded green hatchback pulling out from the supermarket parking lot. The kind of car you forget even exists until you see one in real life. I hesitated, just a beat, then shifted into drive and pulled out slowly behind it. From that moment, something in me wouldn't settle. I wasn't scared exactly, just alert. My body was tense, and my eyes kept flicking to the rearview mirror. The guy sat perfectly still. He didn't lean forward anymore. He didn't check his phone. He just stared dead ahead, eyes locked on the hatchback. We drove for a long while, 30 minutes, maybe more. Through quiet roads, winding side streets, old housing estates where the curtains all looked yellowed and tired. At one point, I asked if he wanted me to keep following. He didn't answer. Eventually, he said, "Take the next left and slow down." The green hatchback had turned down a residential road, and I did as he asked. I let the car get a bit ahead, then crept along the edge of the street with my lights still on low beam. Then he told me to stop. "Here," he said, "pull in by the curb." The hatchback was about 50 yards ahead, now parked beneath a street lamp that flickered every few seconds like it couldn't decide whether to die or stay alive. The man reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a small black case, and slipped it into his jacket. Then he opened the door and said without turning, "Wait here, 5 minutes." Before I could respond, he was already walking away. Quick, purposeful strides, hands still in those neat brown gloves. And something inside me was screaming that this wasn't right. I sat there in the dark, the engine humming, trying to keep calm. I watched him disappear behind a hedge. A few seconds later, the street lamp finally gave up and went out. I should have left. I should have pulled out and driven away. But I didn't. Instead, I opened the glove compartment, reached under the loose paper maps and receipts. I hadn't touched the screwdriver in months, but it was still there. My dad used to say never drive nights without a tool in reach, just in case, he used to mutter. I held the handle tight, not sure what I was planning to do with it, but just holding it made me feel less useless. Then I heard shouting. It wasn't loud, not at first, muffled, like someone yelling through clenched teeth. Then a voice snapped loud and fast. "You're lying, you're always lying," a woman's voice answered, sharp and afraid. I couldn't make out the words. Then silence again. I stepped out of the car. Everything in me told me not to, but I had to know. I crept along the pavement, keeping low, heart racing. The screwdriver felt heavy now. When I rounded the hedge, I saw the green car. The door was open. The interior light lit up the inside just enough. A man, not the guy I was driving, was slumped across the passenger seat, not moving. And my passenger, he wasn't there. I didn't hear him coming up behind me, but I felt something press lightly into the back of my neck. Not hard, not violent, just there. "You didn't wait where I said," he whispered. I couldn't move. "I told you, 5 minutes, now drive away." I don't know how long I stood there before he stepped back and let me go. When I got back to the car, he was already inside, sitting calmly like nothing had happened. He said nothing the whole ride back, just tapped his knee lightly with 2 fingers. Tap, 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 Tom. Then he asked to be dropped off near the old train station. No houses around, just the empty tracks and weeds growing through the pavement. When I pulled over, he leaned forward again and said, "Don't think too much about tonight." You get used to quiet in this job. The kind that stretches between streetlights when you're driving alone at 2 a.m., and it's just the hum of the tires and the occasional crackle of static from the dispatch radio. You learn to read a person in seconds by the way they glance at your plates before opening the door, how they sit, how fast they speak. That's the kind of intuition that keeps you out of trouble, most nights. That was the kind of quiet that wraps around your ribs and tightens. It started out normal. I was 4 hours into my shift, a Wednesday night, late autumn. The air outside was cold enough to cloud up the windows a bit when I stopped. My heater was wheezing just enough to keep the windshield clear, and I was thinking about wrapping up after one more fare. The request came through just after 1:30 a.m., pick up near an old petrol station on the outskirts of town. Place had been partially boarded up since the summer. One flickering bulb above the shop front, and an old payphone out front that somehow still worked. I pulled up, headlights sweeping across gravel, and there he was. Tall guy. Mid-30s maybe. No coat, just a button-up shirt and jeans. He was already standing there like he'd been waiting, hands in his pockets, staring straight at the car before I'd even turned in. I remember thinking something was off right away, but I couldn't place it. Maybe it was the fact he didn't shiver once, even with that wind blowing. He got in the back seat without saying a word. No greeting, just sat back and gave me a street name a few miles out of town. Then, in a voice like he was asking about the weather, he said, "Do you live alone?" I paused. You get weird questions sometimes in this line of work. Drunks, lonely people, folks just trying to fill silence, but something about the way he asked that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I gave a half laugh. "Nah, not really." "Why?" He didn't answer, just looked out the window, hands still deep in his pockets. I started driving. The road was empty, just us, headlights cutting through trees, and that uncomfortable quiet again. I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, trying to catch his eyes. He didn't blink, just stared at the woods rolling past like they meant something. Maybe it was just the hour, or the lack of sleep, but I started to feel boxed in. The car, the road, the cold night, it all felt too small, too close. Then he leaned forward. "You don't lock your front door at night, do you?" "Trombadation timos." "This." I didn't laugh. I didn't say anything. I just glanced down at the GPS. His pin was placed out past the last house on that stretch, near the bend where the pavement starts to crack and fade into gravel. He noticed me looking. "Don't worry," he said. "You're not taking me there anymore. Take a left at the next road. I want to see where you live." I kept my hands on the wheel. "What?" I knew that if I argued, if I did anything sudden, I might not walk away from this. At the next turn, instead of going left, I went right, quietly, smoothly, like I was obeying. But I wasn't. I had a plan. There was an old fire station that had recently been turned into a volunteer training center. Small place, but always had a couple staff around at night. Just ahead, off a dead-end road. If I could get close, maybe he'd catch on too late. But about 3 minutes in, he leaned forward again. I felt something cold press against the back of my seat. He wasn't holding it against my skin yet, but I could hear the scrape of metal against leather. "You think I don't know where you're going?" I didn't answer. My throat had gone dry. The building was only 2 turns away. I could see the glow of the old floodlights up ahead through the trees. "Tell me," he said, "you ever wonder how many people die in the back seats of cars like this? People like you never check." He was closer now. I could smell his breath. It was sweet, almost rotting, like fruit left too long on a windowsill. "I don't want to hurt you," he said. "Not if I don't have to. I just need inside your house. I need somewhere to stay for the night." He said it calm, so calm it scared me more than if he'd been yelling. I don't know what came over me then, but I slammed the brakes hard. The tires screeched, the whole car jolted, and I heard him hit the back of my seat. He let out a grunt, and I used that moment to lunge into my glove compartment. My hand found the small thing my brother gave me last Christmas, a tiny flare gun. He thought it was a joke gift, said I might need it someday. I never laughed harder, until that night. I turned, still seated, arms stretched across the divider, and pointed it directly at him. "Out," I said. "Now." His face twisted in a way I can't describe. It wasn't anger. It wasn't fear either. It was like he didn't understand what was happening, like I'd broken some rule he thought I'd follow. He stepped out, calm as anything, shut the door gently. Then he walked around the car. Not away, just around, once, slowly, then he vanished into the trees. I waited there until morning, didn't move an inch. I just watched the tree line, shaking, hands white on the wheel. I filed a report, but no one matched the description. The street name he gave didn't exist. The clothes, too plain to trace. I remember it was raining just a little that morning. Not the loud kind of rain that drums against your windshield, but the slow kind, barely a whisper. The sort of rain that just clings to the air like a weight. I had only taken the early shift because I couldn't sleep the night before. I sometimes drive part-time just to keep the mind busy, to stretch the day a bit further than it needs to go. The request came in from an address that looked like it was part of an old medical district. Those crumbling brick buildings with stained white awnings and chipped signs where no one's changed the bulbs in the porch light for years. I didn't think much of it, just another pickup. Maybe someone heading to a checkup or to grab a prescription. I pulled up to the drop curb in front of the main entrance. Through the fogged-up windshield, I could see her standing under the little overhead ledge, her arms crossed tight over her chest. She wasn't dressed for the weather, just a loose sweater and leggings, but not the kind that looks thrown on. It looked like she got dressed in silence, the kind of silence you feel more than hear. She climbed in quietly, didn't say much, just confirmed her name. Her voice was small, cracked a little when she spoke. We pulled away, and for a minute or two, it was just the soft noise of the rain and the tires sliding over wet asphalt. Then she said something I wasn't expecting. "Can you not take the highway?" she asked. "Of course," I said. "Back roads okay?" She nodded. Now, if you're someone who's driven people around for a while, you start to pick up on cues, tight posture, a certain way someone holds their breath, how their voice changes between one sentence and the next. Something in her body language told me she wasn't anxious about traffic. She just didn't want to be around people. I took the longer way, cutting through residential blocks, by closed-down gas stations, and those corner stores that seemed to always have the same single car parked out front, no matter the hour. Eventually, she spoke again. "I was pregnant," she said. There was no build-up to it, just that. I didn't know what to say, so I kept my eyes on the road, gave her space to keep talking if she needed to. "It was twins," she added. 12 weeks. I went in for a scan, and her voice caught. I heard her inhale, hold it, and let it out through her nose like she was trying to keep the shape of her grief inside her body. "They were both gone," she whispered. I didn't look back, but I could hear her gently unfold something. I could tell from the way the paper crinkled it was an ultrasound photo. I didn't ask to see it. She held it like it was still a heartbeat. "You think you're ready for that kind of pain," she said. "But it doesn't care." I nodded, not that she could see it. She went quiet for a while after that. The kind of silence that felt like it was absorbing the sound from everything else. The blinkers, the soft rattle of my keys, even the hum of the engine. Every time I glanced in the rearview mirror, I could just barely see the corner of the paper in her hand, like she was holding on to proof that what she lost had been real. We were a few minutes away from her place when she said something else that stayed with me. "They say twins can still feel each other even after they're gone. I hope they're not scared." That did something to me. I don't know how to explain it. It wasn't just sorrow. It was a kind of dread, like she had carried something not just within her body, but through her entire soul, and now that it was gone, something else had filled the space. When we pulled up to her building, she didn't move right away, just stared out the window for a bit. Then she thanked me, softly, and stepped out into the misting rain. She left the door slightly open behind her. I watched her walk slowly up the path, holding that ultrasound against her chest, as if keeping it close might somehow bring them back. I sat there longer than I meant to, long enough for the windows to fog, long enough for the silence to settle too deep in the car.